Good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I so do appreciate you being here this morning. We've got so much to get to. Hello again, America. How are you? How are you, my freedom-loving folks? You are trapped behind enemy lines in the People's Republic of Illinois. Welcome back to the Conservative Cat Show. We are here to expose corruption, defend liberty, tell the truth, and do it all with a sharp tongue and even sharper Bible verses. So I'm your host, Kat, and today we are going to be going after the educational Goliath in Illinois, and that is teachers' unions. We're going to be exposing the teachers' unions. They have been caught hiding, really. I took a look at a union contract. Somebody had sent it over to me. It's pretty well hidden. It's very deceptive. They don't let you know that you can opt out. So we're going to be talking about that because the deadline is approaching for you to opt out. So if you are a teacher this morning, I hope that you pay attention and listen up. You do not have to be a part of the teachers union if you don't want to be. It's not very productive, I guess, to be a part of the union, because they're spending all of your union dues on radical agendas. They are funding radical agendas with your union dues. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about that, but I'm also going to be talking about these runaway lawmakers, Pritzker's Texas hideout for Democrats, these Texas Democrats. It's a hideout for them here in the state of Illinois, these Chicago hotels I'm imagining they're staying at. I'm going to expose the jaw-dropping hypocrisy on gerrymandering here, okay? All of a sudden, he's like this immoral authority on democracy and drawing fair maps, Governor J.B. Pritzker, but we take a look at his state. It is completely jaw-dropping the amount of gerrymandering that has gone on for decades here in the state of Illinois. I'll even show you guys the map from 1970. We need to go back to that map. Whatever the hell that map was, we need to go back to that. And I'll compare and contrast the two maps, and you'll see the big difference, what a gerrymandered map looks like compared to a non-gerrymandered map. So let's get into it, lovely folks. Yes, you all hear all the time that people want to support teachers and that, you know, we care about our teachers. We do. We do. But the unions don't. These union bosses, they say that they support the teachers, but actually what they're doing with the union dues, they are spending most of the money on lobbying for things like abortion, DEI quotas, left-wing lunacy. Okay, so teachers, you are loved, you are appreciated. You do not need the teacher unions to back you up or to support you. You have the support of your community, and your child is not able to read past fifth grade level, okay? And they're lobbying for all of this baloney. The teachers union, they're not lobbying for better curriculum. They're not lobbying for anything that's going to be productive for the child, okay? They're lobbying for this left-wing lunacy, the teachers unions in the state of Illinois, and you're helping them do that if you're a teacher and you're a contributing member of the union or you're a union member. So we're going to go with the Illinois Education Association. So there is a mid-September deadline. Not a lot of teachers know this, but you can, in fact, opt out of being a union member. Not a lot of people know this. And this mid-September deadline is fast approaching. Today's episode is all about how good teachers are getting wise. They are starting to realize, like, hey, I can opt out and still keep all of the benefits of the union and my benefits, my employee benefits, all of that, because of a little Supreme Court ruling, which I will get to. But they are walking away from the unions. They are building something better. And just remember, you could probably take what you would pay as far as a union dues and just pay into like a fund or a savings account and save up for your own legal representation. Okay, there's groups out there that you can hire for your legal representation, but you're supposed to be getting, and from what I understand, through the collective bargaining, even if you're a non-union member, you get benefits. Okay, the same benefits that of a union member. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to take a quick drink here because my throat is dry this morning. Okay, let's start with the basics. I've got some flavored water here. It's kind of like fruit punch flavor. It's really good. Flavored water, when I say that, I'm actually drinking Patriot Pump Energy. So patriotpumpenergy.com, you can get your premium pre-workout. I use it all the time. It's got like 150 milligrams of caffeine in it. It's really, really good for you. It's got that black pepper extract. It's not like your typical energy drinks where they try to get you hooked with exorbitant amounts of caffeine and sugar. That's not what we do. So be sure to go to patriotpumpenergy.com, get your bottle of Patriot Pump today, and use promo code ConservativeCat. Okay. So let's start with the basics here. If you are a teacher in Illinois, public school, union environment, you might think you have to be a union member. Here's the truth. You don't. Not since Janus versus ASME. Okay, this was a 2018 Supreme Court ruling, and they finally said you can't force someone to fund speech that they don't agree with. Imagine that. It took us 200 years, I guess, to get here. I can't believe the Supreme Court ruling was just since 2018, but a lot of people don't know about the ruling. So you pretty much get all of the same benefits. Now, correct me in the comment section if you're a teacher and you don't get that. I think through the collective bargaining process, you also, if you're a non-union member, you get all the same benefits. So like, there's really no reason to be in the union unless you enjoy contributing to an organization that dedicates its lobbying efforts for left-wing lunacy, like abortion, DEI policies, things like that. Okay, of course, the IEA doesn't exactly advertise. They don't promote this little fact that you don't have to be a part of the union. And actually, it doesn't really change your life at all if you're not a part of the union. Now, my recommendation, obviously, because let's be real, retaliation exists. They're not supposed to. According to the Supreme Court ruling, you're not supposed to be treated any differently if you're a non-union member. But I would recommend, if you're not going to be a part of a union, take what you would spend on union dues, stow it away in a high yield savings account, and save it up for legal representation if you were ever to need it. Okay. Get your own insurance policy, get your own legal representation. Okay. And choose somebody you like. Choose somebody who's actually going to represent you in your interests. So it's a dirty little secret. They don't let you know, or they don't advertise the fact that you don't have to be a union member. So according to the Illinois policy, the average Chicago teacher union member, they fork over $1,400 a year. You calculate that out, it's like $116 a month. Okay, if you were to break it down monthly. And get this, out of that $1,400 a year, only about $149 of that goes towards actual representation. So what I mean by actual representation is like your legal representation. If, for example, your pay is off, or principal says something inappropriate to you as a teacher, you can go to your rep and you can have your rep fight for you and fight for your benefits, right? But your union rep, but only about $149 of your dues every year, and you're paying about $1,400 per year if you're in the Chicago Teachers Union. You only get $149 of that towards actual representation. The rest of it goes towards political spending. So that's union bosses are winning, your top union members, your people who are working within the union, they're getting exorbitant salaries. The teachers lose, the kids lose. They're not even really in the conversation, the kids, to be honest with you. So what exactly are they buying with all of those dues? Politicians. That's who they're buying. They're lining the pockets of legislators. So Tara Costa Howard, she got nearly $500,000 from the teachers union. And you know, it shouldn't shock us that she was behind this bill that was anti-homeschooling. We know that kids do better in homeschooling environments. We know that kids do better in private school environments. But what this legislator was doing was pushing the bill HB 2827, which was a huge bill. It was tightening the noose really around homeschooling families. So these are the same people, by the way, who scream, my body, my choice, my body, my choice when it comes to abortion, but yet they'll send inspectors to your home if you dare teach your child about the Constitution instead of climate anxiety. When it comes to school, they are not about choice. So you get a friendly legislator, you buy off this legislator to do the bidding of the teachers union. They don't want people going into homeschooling. They don't want teachers going into homeschooling because guess what? That means their membership is going to go down. Okay, so it's all about membership and it's all about those union dues. So that way they can all make salaries and continue their lifestyles of buying politicians off and buying political favors. And yeah, it's all about control. So don't do it. Don't give them that control. Leave the system entirely. Okay. And if you do leave the system entirely, they try to purchase off politicians to punish you for leaving the system entirely, like they did with House Bill 2827, where they were trying to tighten the noose around homeschooling families' necks. So not everyone is taking all of this lying down, though. Sarah Fletcher, she's a former charter school educator, and she's now the head of White Horse Academy. This is in Central Illinois. It's a private Christian school. And private Christian schools, yeah, that's not a place where the government gets to tell you how to educate the kids. So she moved from Arizona to Illinois, and she wanted no part of the union stronghold, right? So she was a charter school educator in Arizona. She did not want to be part of it because, in her words, quote from the Center Square, I didn't want to be pressured into or have to be mandated to pay dues. Yeah, it's really expensive. So the range that I've seen for teachers union dues, it's anywhere between $40 to $168 a month. Okay, so this is not like chump change. This is pretty expensive. Teachers should be paying or keeping all of their paycheck. They're not making insane amounts of money. Okay, they make about average as everybody else. So when people are screaming, teachers should be paid more, really, I don't think so. When you calculate their days off, which they get a lot of days off, Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, they get spring break, summer break. When you calculate all the days off, weekends, they're pretty much averaging out like above almost average of what your average Illinoisan is getting. Okay, so like I think the average salary is like somewhere like around $50,000. Your teacher is getting about that. Okay, so they're not getting paid any less than like your average Illinoisan who isn't a teacher. Okay, so Sarah, she founded the White Horse Academy in part to give teachers a place to kind of seek refuge, a place where they won't have to hold some sort of union approved state certificate to teach. They don't have to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the rainbow flag when they're hired, essentially. They have autonomy over the way they educate. And most states actually do this. So I didn't even realize this. In Arizona, they don't have state certifications. Teachers have a lot of autonomy in their classroom, and they get to decide how they educate the kid in the classroom. So she's calling out the deceit here. Really, it is deception, what is going on in these union contracts, because you're automatically opted in. You have to opt out of the union. So you're automatically going to be paying those union dues if you don't opt out. And there's a process to opting out. And I can share some resources with you in the description below. If you are a teacher, you can always reach out to me, conservativecatbarker@gmail.com. I can tell you how to opt out if you'd like. They pressure you. They corner you. The unions don't tell you that you can opt out. So they bury this option deep inside, like your contract, under a bunch of legalese. It's like trying to cancel a gym membership run like that is being run by the mafia. It is impossible to cancel this thing. So they make it really hard. You got to jump through hoops to cancel your union membership. So, people say that they're tricked into compliance with this. They're deceived. I just say it's outright fraud. It's fraudulent. They shouldn't be opting people in automatically. You should have to make the decision to be a part of the union, and they've got it all backwards. Shouldn't be opting out should be opting in. If you really wanted to be a union member, you just asked to be a part of the union, okay? So let's not gloss over this. Unions are one of the biggest enemies of school choice. Like I said, with the Tara Coster Howard thing, it's very clear they paid off this, or well, they contributed to this lawmaker, Tara Coster Howard, and then she introduced legislation that is obviously very good for the unions, eliminating the competition, eliminating the possibility of dwindling membership where people flee to homeschool, educators flee to homeschooling or private schools, and then they lose their union membership, okay? Because private school, homeschooling, they don't really unionize, okay? So they are the biggest enemies of school choice. Why? Because school choice breaks up their monopoly that they have. Charter schools, private schools, homeschools, they can't unionize that, and they attack it, they block it, and then they get politicians to kill it. Okay, that's what goes on with these unions. And I want to talk about what this means for the average teacher. Say you're 26 years old, you just graduated, and you love teaching history, you love your country, and you're told that you have to join a union that funds Planned Parenthood, Gavin Newsom, Governor J.B. Pritzker, DEI seminars, and they host DEI seminars that talk about dismantling whiteness. And you're paying $1,400 a year for that privilege to be a part of that. And you just graduated, you love history, you love your country, and you're told that you have to do this. That's kind of like paying your mugger for the cost of the ski mask, like handing the guy who's mugging you $5 for the ski mask that he's wearing. Okay. So here's the kicker. Even if you opt out, you still get to negotiate your salary and benefits. Okay. You kind of get everything that a union member gets through the collective bargaining process. So there's really no reason for you to be paying the union membership dues because you get everything that you would if you were a member. So there's really no benefit other than you're contributing to the politics that they play and the gamesmanship of the unions. That's all your union dues are really going to anyway. So what exactly are you paying for when you pay the union dues? You're paying for their political war chest, okay? A political war chest, one that fights against parental rights, curriculum transparency, biblical values in the classroom. And why would you want to be a part of that? Okay. Now, if you don't join, you might run into this whole, you're not going to get promoted, you're going to be treated differently. And, to that, I say, hey, look at what the disciples had to go through. They were treated very poorly. I mean, in most cases, they all died for following Jesus, right? So be a dissenter. Jesus was a dissenter. He was a little bit rebellious. Don't go with the status quo just because it's safe and just because it's easy. Okay, not everything that's good is easy. So I want to bring us to Marsha McClary. She is a Moms for Liberty advocate. She's the chair, the Lake County chair of Moms for Liberty. I want to share with you her voice. She's not a teacher like Sarah, but she did work in the pharmaceutical world. And she said that, in every other sector, you get to kind of like opt into your company's PAC. Okay, because that's essentially what this is. It's a PAC. It's a political action committee, whether the teacher unions want to admit that or not. We have the hard data. Illinois policy has the hard data of how much 15 to 26%, I think, goes towards legal representation. Like, not a lot of that money that you're contributing to the union is going to actually benefit you in any kind of way. It's going to political causes. Okay, so they're a PAC. And this is what McClary said. She goes, in my job, we had a choice to opt into my company's PAC. Okay, if we didn't, and most people didn't, because if they were super passionate about politics or about a cause, they would just go donate to that cause directly or that candidate directly. Okay, they didn't have to opt out of the company PAC. They had to opt into the company PAC, and that's the way it should be. Bingo. It's called consent. Okay. But teacher unions, they've got it all backwards where you have to opt out. and they lock you in by default, and they make you do all kinds of paperwork to leave. And it's kind of like a hostage situation. Like, you're held hostage until you wake up and realize, like, oh, the 2018 Supreme Court ruling says that I don't have to do this. There's not really a reason for me to do this because the union dues aren't really going towards my legal representation anyway. And the legal representation probably sucks. They're probably people who have like nose rings and blue hair, and they're never going to represent you, as well as maybe a private sector lawyer, somebody that you go and hire, would be able to. So I would just say, take what you would be spending, stow it away. Now, through the collective bargaining, you're supposed to get all these employee benefits and even the legal representation. You're supposed to be entitled to all of that anyway, from what I understand when reading the Supreme Court ruling. But just in case, because there's reality and then there's, what's supposed to be happening. The reality might be that you're treated differently as a non-union member and that you might not get that legal representation. So just be prepared. Once you leave the union, just take what you would pay normally and contribute that into a savings account and wait until you need legal representation. Okay. So McClary, she makes a pretty interesting distinction here that even some conservatives miss. Political activity in this legal defense, it shouldn't be bundled together. That's what I've never really understood about teachers' unions, because like there's a service that they're providing, which is legal defense or representation. And that service should be different than political activism. So like, for example, nonprofit sector, 501c3s have to have a different, tax distinction or different, they have to have a different name than the 501c4s, who are actually political action committees. Okay. So combining these together is shady in the first place. They really shouldn't be combined. The legal defense and the representation, that should be separate that of the political activity that is going on. If a teacher wants the legal coverage, great. But they shouldn't have to be forced into this bundle where they are forced to fund political activism on top of trying to obtain legal representation. That's not freedom, it's extortion. So there's more. Let's talk about this. And this is fascinating, how the unions have over time manipulated teacher licensure. So again, Sarah Fletcher, she says that Illinois refuses to honor, really without jumping through a bunch of hoops. There's like things that you have to go through in order for your out-of-state certificates. So she moved from Arizona to Illinois. You have to jump through hoops in order for Illinois to honor that, because you could be a stellar teacher in Arizona. You walk into Illinois and you'll be told, sorry, you're really not union certified, because the state certification licensure there, it's really all union certified and union approved. Translation, if you're an out-of-state stellar teacher, instead of them welcoming you with open arms as a teacher here in the state of Illinois, they say, you're not one of us. And the union really wants to control who teaches, what's taught, and where the money goes. Okay, so you wonder why all the kids' scores are in the tank, their academic performance is in the tank. It's because charter schools pretty much non-existent. Like, it's fascinating. I didn't even really know what a charter school was. I had to kind of like look it up. Charter school is just simply like, if you go for history or English and get a degree in that, like pretty much anybody can teach. And I've said that before on this program, and that might ruffle some feathers, but it's a practice. Teaching is like something that you can kind of learn. It's almost like, I don't know, like it's a practice. You can practice medicine. You can practice teaching. You can get good at it. Like, for example, if you are working in manufacturing, you probably teach somebody every single day and you don't even realize it. Like, your boss tells you to train this person in this thing that you've been doing at your job, and you train this person, you're a teacher. So like, you're very capable of teaching. I don't know why you would need a specific teacher degree in order to teach in Illinois. For example, so in Arizona, if you have like the charter schools, they allow teachers like to exist if they have like a history degree and they can teach on that subject, or an English degree and they can teach on that subject. They don't need to go through a state certification process, which is union approved. Okay. So, alternative schooling here in Illinois is pretty much non-existent. Like as far as charter schools go, you have to be state approved in order to teach in public school. Okay, so charter schools are essentially public school. They're all taxpayer funded. Okay, they're not privately funded. They're taxpayer funded, but yet there is no like strict certification process. I know I'm like going down a rabbit hole, but alternative curricula, good luck. You know, it's got to be union approved. These union members get these lawmakers to do curriculum mandates and all of that. The climate equity or the climate activism. You have to teach climate change in the state of Illinois now because, you know, the unions pushed that. So unless you're a teacher who teaches gender theory in kindergarten, that's approved and you're okay. You're considered an okay teacher and that's certified. But if you're a history teacher who loves this country and, you know, you don't really want to get state approved and you'd rather just, you know, take your skill and teach it, okay, they don't let you do that here in the state of Illinois. You have to go through a certification process, and it's really all about control. So Sarah Fletcher and Marsha McClary, they both say that there should be some sort of permanent opt-out option. And I agree. Once you opt out of the union, it should be like unsubscribing from a spam email. It should be done once and it sticks. You don't continue to unsubscribe. And let's be honest, if these unions were proud of what they were doing, they wouldn't have to be deceptive. They could be transparent. They wouldn't have to automatically, by default, enroll you into the union. And really, if the unions were so great, they'd advertise this stuff. They'd say, hey, you know, it's completely voluntary. We're so great. You should stay with us voluntarily. That's what they'd be advertising. But they don't do that because they'd know they'd lose their membership in a heartbeat. Like, you know, the membership that they have is only because people are too busy to realize that they can opt out or don't have this knowledge that they can opt out of the union. The only people who are in the unions, the teacher unions, are there if they're radical leftist lunatics and they love the union, they love the teachers union, or they're not there really voluntarily and they just like kind of didn't know that they didn't have this option. They didn't know that they had the option of opting out. So it's time we pull back the curtain and we see teachers unions for what they really are. They're political machines disguised as worker support groups. So the IEA opt-out deadline is approaching in September. And here's the question I have for teachers. Are you going to keep handing your paycheck? Are you going to keep handing part of your paycheck to the people who mock your faith, to the people who ignore the students, to the people who silence your voice and silence the parents' voices? Are you going to keep handing over part of your paycheck to these people? Or are you going to walk away and build something better? Okay, this is really a Daniel moment. You either kneel before the golden statue or you stand in the fire. Okay, this is your moment to stop handing your paycheck over and be a dissenter. All right, I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat. I'll be right back. Hey, this is Conservative Cat Clips, and this is the place where we remind you that your children come from God and they don't come from the Department of Education. The government wants to raise your kids. They want to feed them breakfast. They want to tell them about gender ideology and gender identity as young as kindergarten. They want to start them out really early. They want to tell you, your kids how many pronouns they should have, and they want your kids to learn all the pronouns by the age of 3rd grade. Okay. Meanwhile, they can't keep bathrooms clean in their schools. They can't keep their test scores up, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They can't keep those scores above sea level. The truth here is that bureaucrats don't love their kids. They don't know their quirks, their fears, their hearts, and they certainly don't care what the Bible says about fearing or about raising them and fearing the Lord. Okay, so in Psalm 127, verse 3, children are a heritage from the Lord, not a project for the state, not a cultural science experiment. They are your responsibility, your blessing, and your mission. Okay, but what happens if you step in and they say, I'll take it from here? Okay, and what happens when you step in and say, hey, I'm actually going to take responsibility and I'm going to participate in raising my child? You show up to the school board meetings, you ask about the curriculum, you object to Drag Queen Story Hour and Drag Queen Library Story Hour and all of these pornographic books in the libraries. What happens when you say, I'm going to take it from here, I'm going to start participating in my mission and my responsibility in raising up my child? You are deemed a domestic terrorist. Okay, if you start showing up and if you actually start taking responsibility over raising your child, you are dangerous to democracy. They'll say that. And they'll say that all because you just started loving your kid enough to be involved. So we've normalized this idea that parents should just hand over their kids for 8 hours a day and play catch up over a microwave dinner and try to catch up on who your kid actually is. Your kids are strangers. That's not parenting, that's outsourcing. So the product here is a generation that is anxious, that is confused, and they are spiritually hollow. What if we flipped the script? Really, what if we turned off the screens, cracked open a Bible, and actually parented the way Deuteronomy 6 tells us to parent, at home and all of the time? And I think that our future of the country actually depends on this. And I hope that we start parenting like our future and like the future of the country depends on it, because it does. So don't be intimidated. God gave you those kids for a reason. Raise them up in truth, teach them real values, and never hand over this sacred duty to the folks who say remote learning is the way to go, or gender identity, you can identify as whatever the hell you want. Don't hand over that sacred duty of parenting and raising your children to people who are just wacky weirdos. You can raise your children, and you are required to raise your children because they are a gift from God, and He's bestowed a sacred duty on you as a parent. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate it. Earlier in the show, we were talking about teachers' unions. You can opt out by mid-September. If you need help with that process, go ahead and email me, conservativecatbarker@gmail.com. You can always send me an email. Now, today, folks, this show comes with an extra dose of eye rolling because the hypocrisy coming out of our overlord's mouth is absolutely insane, Governor J.B. Pritzker. And I guess some of these Texas Democrats apparently confused their jobs with vacation because they're here in Illinois and Chicago hotels probably. So grab your coffee and make sure you have your Bible on the table, because we are diving headfirst into the political circus where the tents are blue and the maps are rigged and Democrats are fleeing the state of Texas. Not metaphorically, but they got on a plane and left the state of Texas. So let's talk about this liberal field trip. Texas Democrats are hiding out in Illinois to avoid a vote that they don't like back home in Texas. That's right. The fugitive lawmakers are being protected by a billionaire governor, like he's running some sort of sanctuary hotel for runaway lawmakers. Okay, he provides sanctuary hotels for the illegal immigrants. Now he's providing sanctuary hotels for illegal lawmakers because they do have arrest warrants out on them. Which we'll get here to in just a second, because AG Paxton, Ken Paxton, he said that he was going to vacate their seats come Friday. So that's the new news this morning. But picture this. It's Sunday night, you're a state lawmaker, and your job is to go represent your district. But instead of doing that, you pack a bag, you hop on a plane, and you run. Why? Because your opponents have a vote to pass, and it's something that you don't happen to like. In this case, it has to deal with redistricting. Not to mention, they are supposed to be voting on flood aid as well, and that's getting lost in this conversation. Is like, not only is this a special session to address the redistricting, and people are going to say, like Darren LaHood, and I kind of agree with them. I'm really upset about Darren LaHood not running for governor, by the way. I was hoping that he would. We're screwed if now that he's not running. I don't know what kind of candidate's going to come forward, but hope a good one. But anyway, Darren LaHood, he probably would disagree with me a little bit on this. I mean, I agree with him. Every 10 years, okay, so this isn't your normal 10 years reevaluating the maps. They do that every 10 years. This is kind of like in the middle of it. Now, through their state constitution or whatever, Texas state constitution, they have the ability to do this, okay? And really, I think that the reason why they're doing this is because there's been a lot of madness that has been going on since the Biden administration when it comes to illegal immigration. And we're going to get to the Voter Rights Act because this is the 60th anniversary of the Voters' Rights Act, and it just so happens that this is all lining up right around this time. But we want to make sure that illegal immigrants aren't being included in these districts, and we're not including, and we're really representing the people of Texas. That is what they're trying to do, especially with the flood of illegal immigrants that have come into. It's changed the population. It's changed the way these districts look, and we don't want to go off the population of the illegal immigrants when it comes to our maps, and we have to make sure our maps reflect accurately the populations that are there. Not to mention states like California, Illinois, New York. People have been fleeing those states because of the crime due to the massive influx of illegal immigrants. So a lot of places like Houston, Austin, they're getting very populated. So Florida, if you know anybody in Florida, they'll tell you it's very overpopulated. And it's changed drastically within just the last couple of years. The demographics and the population of these specifically urban areas like Austin, Texas. And we have to make sure we're accurately representing the people of Texas, because that's not fair. You have an influx of population. And really the people who have moved due to the crises that are happening in California and Illinois, and they've had mass population exoduses. They should be appreciative of the fact that the Texas legislature was willing to sit down and say, hey, we need to just reevaluate our map, okay? Because so much has gone on. We need to redistrict. Our state constitution allows us to do that. We have to get our ducks in a row and do this all according to population and the demographics and the geography, because a lot has changed within the last 4 years due to the influx of illegal immigrants. Okay, so I'm going to get to that here in just a second, because Darren LaHood, I think, would disagree with me. He doesn't like the whole, and I don't either, changing the maps before that 10-year period. Okay, so every 10 years they change the maps or they redistrict and they look at the population. But this is a very kind of odd case because of it being a border state, because of the blue liberal states like New York, Illinois, and California, because of the mass exoduses and the fleeing to red states that has been going on, the fleeing to Florida, the fleeing to Texas. They've got to do something. And we're just kind of in unprecedented territory right now, which is why I think the Texas Democrats are doing this, not in your traditional 10-year period. Okay. So what did these people do? The Texas Democrats, they didn't debate, they didn't negotiate, they didn't vote, they fled to Illinois. Texas Governor Greg Abbott saw what was happening and said, fine, arrest them. And honestly, good. You walk off the job, you should be fired. Your seat should be vacated. I'm at a point right now, even if they were to come back, they should be just cuffed and then their seats should be vacated. This is unacceptable. They did this in 2021. So they already had their chance. Okay, they were told back then that this was wrong, and that there are going to be consequences for it. And then they're doing it again in 2025. So you can't let these Democrats treat the legislative process here like it's an optional brunch date. Okay, you can't let them just treat this like a casual thing. Okay, the legislative process. It's not. It's a democratic process, and if you spit all over that, then you need to be held accountable. So enter stage left. We've got Governor J.B. Pritzker. He's the high priest of progressive politics here in Illinois, and he welcomes these Texas Democrats like they're civil rights heroes instead of the elected cowards they are. He welcomes them like they're heroes, and really they're just cowards skipping work. So he holds this press conference. It gets national headlines. JB isn't doing this out of kindness, by the way, or isn't even doing it because he likes his fellow Texas Democrats or his people in his party. He's doing it to boost his image because he has his eyes set on a 2028 presidential bid. Newsflash for JB, they're not going to let you in, the establishment, because they would much rather have a puppet like a Joe Biden, a Jasmine Crockett, a Kamala Harris, and AOC in there who's just going to do their bidding. And you are too ambitious for them, and they will never let you in. Okay. I hate to give compliments to JB, but he is just too ambitious, and he will never be the presidential nominee because of that, because he is a threat to them. So this is just his raw ambition. This is not about voting rights. This is not about democracy. JB is doing this because he has his eyes set on the 2028 presidential bid. He says, and I quote, "Everything is on the table." And this is what Governor J.B. Pritzker said. So to me, when I hear him say that, it sounds an awful lot like the Democrats are going to do anything by any means necessary, okay, to stop the redistricting vote. Okay, so let me translate that for normal people, for the normies out there. We're going to rig it, and we're going to do whatever we need to do as long as our side stays in power. Okay, because this redistricting would ultimately lead to 5 Republican seats. Now, the DNC chair, Ken Martin, he joined the Runaway show at this press conference and said something stunning. He said that this is the new Democratic Party. He says, we're bringing a knife to the knife fight. We're going to fight fire with fire. That's what Texas is doing, because for far too long, there have been blue states like Illinois, New York, and California who have gerrymandered the hell out of their maps and have made it really unfair and really have contained Republican representation to very, very small amounts. So, like, for example, in Illinois, we have 14 Democrats, 3 Republicans. That's outrageous. And now there's even talk that perhaps Governor J.B. Pritzker is going to rewrite some of the maps again and probably draw out some of these sitting Republicans. So that's Mary Miller, Darren LaHood, and Mike Boss. I think those are the only 3 Republicans we've got. Yeah. And, they sound real tough, but then you remember all of these people ran away. And then you remember, like, oh, we're going to fight fire with fire. Wait a second. You guys started the fight first. Texas is responding. Okay. And really, you could make the argument that Texas isn't even really doing this out of retaliation or to try to sway the 2026 elections. I think you have a solid argument that Texas sat down and said, hey, a lot has changed within the last 4 years due to the illegal immigration influx under the Biden administration. We have to sit down and redistrict our maps. So this is the equivalent, really, of starting a bar fight and then hiding in the bathroom and, like, yelling, I'm going to get you. What the Democrats are doing here. They started the bar fight. Okay. But then they ran into the bathroom and started, like, screaming, oh, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. Like, you're not really tough, okay? We're bringing the knife to the knife fight. Just sit down, Martin. Sit down, DNC Chair Ken Martin. Okay, so let's not miss what's underneath this statement. Democrats are saying the quiet part out loud, as always, that this is war and that they don't want consensus. They don't want to agree to disagree. They want complete and utter control, okay? And they don't want Republican states to do what they've been doing for decades now. And I'll show you the 1970 map compared to the, this was amazing. A friend of mine, Kim Miller, she's with the McLean County Republicans, she shared this on her social media page. And I can't believe the difference. Like, it's such a fascinating difference between the 1970 map of Illinois and the 2025 map, where the districts line up and what they look like. And with AI and like computers, I just don't know why we can't generate a non-biased map, like a grid. Okay, you have to have X amount of straight lines. We have to divvy this up by geographic demographics. Okay, like, I don't know what's so hard about that. We did it in 1970 when we didn't have all of that technology that could remove human bias. So they are willing to burn down the Democrats. They are willing to burn down the legislative process and legislative governance to get control. They are willing to burn it all down. So I want to get to Jed Davis. He drops the hammer here. He's a Republican from Yorkville. He didn't hold back. He pointed to the violent rhetoric that has been stirred up by Democrat leaders, that has really stirred up these Democrats by leaders like Governor J.B. Pritzker. Thank God somebody has a spine. Let's take a look at this press conference and what Davis had said as well in this clip, the Center Square clip. Take a listen.
Repeat, Donald Trump is a cheater. So is Governor Greg Abbott. And Texas Republicans are carrying out their will. And if they're going to cheat, then all of us have to take a hard look at what the effect of that cheating is on democracy. And that means we've all got to stand up and do the right thing. So as far as I'm concerned, everything is on the table.
The whole thing is asinine, to say the least. I mean, it's just our governor, Governor Pritzker, is kind of puffing his chest up to try to build up this national presence of protecting freedom, which is the last thing that he actually cares about as a governor here in Illinois. Look at our maps. Like, I can't even believe the irony on this. Just look at the maps in Illinois, even if it's just the congressional maps, and tell me that is not drawn in such a way to rig the outcome of elections. And now you're going to get on a throne and get all pious on what Texas is doing. Like, forget about Texas. How about we worry about our backyard on people that are being crushed by escalating utility costs and property taxes, and get off the national stage and stop pretending like you care because our maps prove otherwise, and actually get to the heart of the people of Illinois and the issues that we're dealing with.
And as I've said, Democrats are going to fight this tooth and nail, and until the will of the voters is respected. This is not the Democratic Party of your grandfather, which would bring a pencil to the knife fight. This is a new Democratic Party. We're bringing a knife to a knife fight, and we are going to fight fire with fire.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. We did a press conference, as you know, with Secretary Noem, and they had people come out just so much anger and violence and right in our face confrontationally. And this is like, what do you expect? This is the rhetoric that our governor is putting out there. People are going to show up.
Well, I know that you're all interested in whether I'm writing checks, to this. Let me be clear. You're saying, of course, but let me be clear. I have stood with the Texas House Democrats. We have been in consultation for weeks and weeks. This possibility was always something that we feared. And I made it clear to them that we'd do everything that we could, logistically and otherwise, to try to support them. I have not written a check or supported them financially, though I am not reticent to do that. But I have not done that. But lots and lots of people around the country have. Lots of people. And you can go to texasdemocrats.com/donate and give money to support this and the efforts of Texas Democrats across the state.
Okay, so I want share that with you. I do want to share this map with you, just to show you the difference between a 1970 map and today's map. So today's map right here, this is the Illinois map. You can see the Illinois 13th. This is Nikki Budzinski. Cuts right through, gathers up all of these, and this is a Democrat district right here. It's kind of like a big old middle finger. I call it the middle finger district. It's like it's flipping you off. So the middle finger district, this is Nikki Budzinski's district. It cuts through and it, gathers up some of Springfield, some of these urban areas in order to make it a Democrat district. And then you take a look at Eric Swarnson's. This is the 17th. This is designed to catch all of the urban areas and to make this blue. Now let's look at the 1971. So this is from 1970. This is what our map used to look like. This is the way it should continue to look like. This is fair. This is, almost looks like a grid. It includes rural. It includes urban areas. But it does it in a way that is fair, in that you're not trying to loop in. So the way that they write Republicans out is they loop in, they redraw the maps, and then they redraw their districts to include Chicago, parts of Chicago. So you'll see that here in the 17th. This used to be like a Republican district. So 17 could have been probably 1970s, 19. Okay. But you see what they did. This was your traditional Republican, what used to be 19, right? Where it's kind of rural. It's right there, right outside of Iowa. But what they did, they expanded it, and look what it is now. It includes Rockford, it includes Peoria and Bloomington and Normal. These are urban areas to make it more blue. So now 19 won't be towards a Democrat, or won't be favored for a Democrat. It'll be favored, or a Republican, it'll be favored for a Democrat. So that is the best way you could probably explain it. Another one might be okay, so here's 23. This kind of includes some Southern Illinois, right? Maybe almost like Springfield, but it kind of cuts Springfield in half. 23 kind of turned into 15 and 13. They kind of split it up here. Now they've got, so 15 is Mary Miller's, right? But they cut into Mary Miller's district. They'll probably redraw her map as well, to include maybe some urban areas where, let's see here, she could probably they could include some urban areas, maybe parts of Springfield. They cut this back a little bit, and they cut, maybe some of where Champaign is. They cut back some of her district, and they include more parts of those urban areas. And then all of a sudden 15 becomes a Democrat district. That's how they could do it. That's how they would make it into a Democrat district, is just by including more urban areas. So hopefully that makes some sense to you. But I can't believe it, folks. I mean, they call Republicans cheaters, racists, threats to democracy, but every single time they open up their mouths, they use some of this violent rhetoric, right? Governor J.B. Pritzker, he said, we're going to take to the streets. And just a couple of months ago, he had some pretty violent rhetoric right there. I mean, the DNC chair saying we're taking a knife to the knife fight and we are going to fight fire with fire. That's pretty violent rhetoric. Okay. And he's saying this in an open press conference. Now, I said on my microphone, to my audience here, and be sure to subscribe, I said, the Texans should fight fire with fire. It's much different when you have a leader, standing on each side of him, the governor of Illinois, the lieutenant governor, Juliana Stratton, sitting members of Congress. It's very different when you're hosting a press conference and you're using that kind of violent rhetoric or inflammatory rhetoric. So Pritzker's words are like gasoline. Far left mobs are the match. Okay, so here's where the hypocrisy really hits full throttle. These Democrats fled Texas to protest redistricting, and they claim Texas Republicans are redrawing the maps to win seats, and maybe they are, right? And maybe they are. I don't know. I really am of the belief that the Texas Republicans sat down and they said, hey, things have really started to change in the state because of the illegal immigration crisis, because of the rampant crime that has been going on in these blue states. A lot of these blue state folks have been fleeing to Texas. So we're going to have to redraw the maps. Let's take a quick look at who's talking here, though. The hypocrisy is on full display. Illinois, under Governor J.B. Pritzker, under his supermajority Democrat legislature, they passed some of the most gerrymandered. I just showed you the 2025 map. It's a big old middle finger right there in the middle of the map. Some of the most gerrymandered maps in the country, if not the most gerrymandered maps in the country. There have been leftist organizations who have given Illinois failing grades when it comes to the maps. Even left-leaning watchdog groups have said that Illinois' maps look like a Jackson Pollock painting. Okay, have you ever seen this? Like a Jackson Pollock painting after he's had 6-pack of energy drinks, Monster energy drinks. They're twisted, they're splattered. It's just a bunch of nonsense. And really, they are designed to contain and squash Republican influence and representation. And, you know, it bothers me that Pritzker is suddenly the face of fair maps. Give me a break, man. So Darren LaHood chimed in, and he's quoted in the Center Square, and, you know, he said, you know, mid-decade, so not doing this every 10 years, but doing it in the middle of the decade, like what's happening in Texas, he said that this isn't a good habit to start. And I do agree with him there. However, there is something to be said about the last 4 years here and what's gone on with the illegal immigration, with the crime-ridden blue cities and people fleeing these blue states like crazy. I mean, the U-Hauls out of Illinois are insane. Okay, max exodus has been going on, and people are fleeing to Texas. So they have to sit down and they have to say, hey, we have to reevaluate our maps here because we've got huge population changes in the state. Illegal immigrants. We have these people leaving the blue states. We've got to sit down and address this. Okay, so I agree with them. I wish that they would just do it every decade. It makes it nice and clean. They also should take the human element out of it. Being that we're living in the year 2025, you could probably computerize this thing and take all human bias out of it. Okay, and just make a grid when it comes to the maps and, you know, say, hey, there has to be X amount of straight lines in this map. So here's what Democrat Congressman Mike Quigley said in a rare moment of sanity. He said, quote, we'd be better off if we just took a beat and looked at a bipartisan map legislation. Let's see what the public really wants. So this Democrat, he's a congressman. He has a rare moment of sanity here, and he start talking about bipartisan legislation at a federal level. By the way, and I'll get to that here in just a second, but he's suggesting the public should have a voice here and that there should just be bipartisan legislation at a national level. I agree. Why don't we just write a piece of legislation that says, hey, we're taking the human element out of it entirely. This is use a computerized system to generate the maps, and the maps have to have X amount of straight lines in them. Something that, you know, everybody can get behind. But here's why Quigley said what he said. He wants to get the national attention off of how piss poor Illinois is being run right now. Okay, he wants to shift the conversation to national reforms because then they can make it look like Texas is just the only bad guy in this story. Right now, people are pointing out the hypocrisy. They're pointing out how bad the maps, and people are looking at the maps. Okay, never before have you seen an Illinois congressional map go viral? Okay, like they have, and the attention is on Illinois because it's truly gerrymandered, and it's way worse than what Texas even has. So he wants the attention off of Illinois' maps because truly they're just indefensible. The left-wing organizations, CNN, even quivers and they say, ugh, that map, ugh, gross. like CNN would probably even look at this map and not be able to defend it. So Quigley knows this. He knows that the attention is there, and he definitely doesn't want the maps to be drawn fairly here in the state of Illinois. So he's calling for national reforms, and he knows that the national reforms, they won't be able to get something together, quickly and effectively. And he knows that it'll be a mess in Congress to try to get this passed, because nobody wants to give up their positions as congressmen, and they want to keep their jobs. So he knows that if they take the fight national, and if they start talking about bipartisan map legislation at a national level, that nothing will ever get done, because these people all want to stay in their jobs. Okay, so the cherry on top here is that this whole political performance is kind of coinciding with the 60th anniversary of the Federal Voting Rights Act. So I'm going to talk about the Voting Rights Act. Yeah, turning the lights on made the roaches run. Yeah, so now all of a sudden you've got Democrats saying, yeah, well, why don't we just talk about it at a national level and do national reforms? I think it's hilarious. So I'm not for that. I think that we should be arresting these Texas Democrats who fled their job. We should be vacating their seats, because really it should be up to the states. I just don't know why at a state level we can't all agree that, hey, let's take the human bias out of it and let's generate the maps via computer. Okay, there's no reason why humans should be drawing these maps in the year of 2025. It's very easy to come up with a program, to make a grid, and to draw the maps in a fair way. Anyway, so this is this is kind of colliding with the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. This is a law that was actually intended to protect minorities in the South from, actual voter suppression that the Democrats were engaged in during the 1960s. So now it's used as a political baseball bat to accuse Republicans of cheating anytime they dare to try to win. Okay, anytime they come up with some sort of political tactics that their colleagues are coming up with in states like New York, Illinois, California, if they come up with a way to win, which is what Texas is doing, arguably, for 2026, they're accused of violating the Voter Rights Act, right? Or voter suppression. So the Democrats don't want fair maps. They want frozen maps that are permanently entrenched their power and erase yours and erase your voice and your representation. There are 33 counties in Illinois that are seceding. And the reason why is because, like I showed you in that map, the representation downstate is not a thing. Like, it's just not a thing anymore. You're not being represented by people who have your best interest in mind, because you're obligated as a congressman to fight for the people in Chicago. Let's take a look at this map one more time. Okay, so here we go. The only one that kind of looks fair might be like 12. Okay, and that's Mike Boss's district. But even then, this is like a very huge district, and they, carve out this urban area here. And they've purposely made 12, 15, and 16 kind of like Republican. And then all the other ones are Democrat. Okay. So what they do here is they include Chicago districts in rural areas. So, for example, 17 is a great one. Some of this is rural areas, but in order to make it a Democrat-favored district, they include parts of like Chicago or parts of Rockford and these urban areas here. And that's just like totally not fair to the people who are living in, some of these rural areas here. They're not being accurately represented. And fairly represented. So let me get rid of that. Democrats, they don't want fair maps. They want frozen maps, and they want to make sure that they stay in control. They say that you're a threat to democracy, that you're racist, and that you're a danger to society. And they use this inflammatory rhetoric, and it's just dishonest. It's evil. um, if you disagree and if you say, hey, actually, we should make this look more like the 1970 map. Here it is. This is the difference. That's the 1970 map. I can't share enough the major differences between this map and this map. It's crazy, the gerrymandering that has gone on. So at the end of the day, the story isn't about Texas. It's not even really about Illinois. It's about a party who believes that the rule of law shouldn't be a thing, and that really they believe in ruling. Okay, they believe in tyranny. They believe in controlling people and wiping out Republican representation altogether and rural representation, because really that's what this is all about. Because it's not fair to have a congressman like, for example, Darren LaHood. Some of his district, the 16th district, includes parts of Chicago, and you know, the rural people, he's got to answer to the people in Chicago and the rural people in southern or central Illinois. And that's not, you can't appease both because they both have very different interests. So we should keep it fair geographically, demographically. These districts should be, you know, kind of the same, where you're representing the same type of person. And you don't have to travel 4 hours to get to one part of your district. Okay. So this party believes in ruling. They don't believe in the rule of law. It's about a Governor J.B. Pritzker, who preaches fairness while stuffing the state like a Thanksgiving turkey with gerrymandered districts and runaway spending. Okay. So this is about elected Democrats in 2 different states who are literally, or in a state who are literally willing to hop on a plane and avoid their job. That's what this is about. This is about elected officials not doing their job, and then they're lecturing the rest of the country about democracy. And really what this is about, it's about people like you and me, normal Americans who are sick of being lied to, sick of being taxed to death, and we're treated like obstacles rather than citizens. Okay, they try to dream up ways to not represent us and to keep themselves in power and to keep themselves in control. And I want to talk about the Voting Rights Act because we're going to hear a lot about this, I think, in the coming weeks. 1965 Voting Rights Act. Okay, this is one of the most important civil rights pieces of legislation in American history. It was designed to eliminate real, documented barriers of voting, barriers that Democrats used, like polls, poll taxes, literacy tests, intimidation tactics, primarily in the Jim Crow South. Democrats, they used real barriers during the 1960s, okay? And today, Democrats, they are twisting this really important piece of civil rights legislation. They're twisting it as a political weapon. So what they do, whenever a Republican state says, you know, hey, we should introduce some basic voting integrity laws, like voter ID requirements, we should clean up our outdated voter rolls, we should require signature verification on mail-in ballots, okay? When they say common sense integrity laws, okay, like that, Democrats immediately start shouting, Jim Crow 2.0, you're racist, you're a bigot. They invoke the Voters' Rights Act, and they don't address actual voter suppression that's going on. They don't address how our voting process is being delegitimized through things like mail-in ballots, through things like lax voter ID requirements or lax signature requirements. Like, they don't want to address any of that. So, for example, Georgia, fun fact, passed a voting law in 2021, which actually resulted in more early voting days. And it was more early voting days than President Joe Biden's home state of Delaware. They had a lot of extra voting days. And they passed like a voting law, common sense integrity law. And the media and Joe Biden, they all screamed from the rooftop. They said, this is worse than Jim Crow, and they cited the Voters' Rights Act. Now, I don't know about you. Voters law, like a voting law, Georgia law, that results in more early voting days. I don't know how you could cite that as worse than Jim Crow, or cite this is a violation of the Voting Rights Act as, and cite your Voting Rights Act as the moral authority here. I don't know. So they have weaponized the Voting Rights Act. Okay. So when Republicans win state legislatures and they draw the congressional maps, Democrats will frequently sue under the Voting Rights Act. Okay, so that's probably what's going to wind up happening here is the Democrats will ultimately, if they go back, if the Texas Democrats go back, what they probably will, we're going to get to Ken Paxton now saying, the AG, that they're going to vacate their seats, and now they're going to be like roaches crawling back to the state of Texas because they don't want to lose their jobs because they love power control and not working in the private sector, okay, and doing actually something with their lives. So they're actually going to start crawling back, but then we're going to start to see the lawsuits happen, and they're going to sue under the Voting Rights Act, claiming that the new lines dilute minority votes, even when minority representation improves, okay, or stays the same. So in Texas, what they're trying to do is just make sure that everything is up to speed because there's been so many changes demographically and as far as the population goes because of the illegal immigration crisis and because of the exodus from these blue states. So that's what the Democrats are going to do. They're going to sue under the Voting Rights Act. Democrat drawn maps, like in states like Illinois, Maryland, Illinois, New York, California, and they completely obliterate Republican districts, by the way. Texas isn't even obliterating. Like, it's still pretty fair. When you look at this, they're adding 5 Republican districts. Definitely Republican heavy, but Texas always has been. Okay. And they are obliterating states like Illinois, Republican districts altogether. Like I said, there's only 3. And I wouldn't doubt that, like Mary Miller, Karen LaHood, Mike Boss, they've got to watch their backs because they might have their districts redrawn from underneath them, and they might no longer be representatives anymore. Okay, so they're going to be completely obliterated, these few Republican districts that we have left in Illinois. And they're rarely, like Republicans rarely challenge these Democrat-drawn maps under the VRA, the Voters' Rights Act. So this is selective kind of enforcement. The law is not being evenly applied here. The Voter Rights Act. Republicans need to get a fire under their butts. And really, I would love to see Republicans sue over the Illinois maps, an organization sue over that and cite the Voters' Rights Act. Because really, they are discriminating against rural voters. Rural voters are being treated differently, and they're discriminating against rural voters and not providing them adequate representation because they're including a lot of these urban areas in their districts in order for it to be favorable to a Democrat. Okay, and that's not fair because there's nothing the farmer has. They don't have the same interests. The urbanite from Chicago does not have the same interests as somebody in Lincoln, Illinois, the farmer in Lincoln, Illinois. Okay, so Democrats have tried to pass sweeping federal election takeovers, like HR 1. This was the For the People Act. It didn't go anywhere. They cited the Voters' Rights Act as justification for creating this legislation. What that bill would have done was ban voter ID altogether nationwide, which is so ridiculous because that's like an 80-20 issue. Most people want voter ID. It's easier. It would be easier where you could just flash your driver's license and say, I'm here to vote, right? And prove who you are. Because we don't want illegal immigrants voting in our elections. And most people don't want that, okay? They don't want their votes canceled by somebody who is Guatemalan before they are American, to quote our Democrat Congresswoman from Illinois. Yesterday, I talked about her. She was at a Mexican summit, and she goes, "I'm a Guatemalan before I'm an American." Really? You just pledged foreign allegiance. What? That's treason. Anyway, so what that H.R. 1 would have done was also force states to allow unlimited mail-in voting, which is just ridiculous. Strip states of their constitutional right to control elections. States have control over their elections. They have the ability to redistrict their maps. And what this bill would have done was taken that all away. So they say it's to protect voting rights, things like H.R. 1. But really what this is, it's permanently tipping the scales in favor of Democrats by banning all safeguards that would prevent fraud and abuse. They love bloating the voter rolls. For example, the automatic voter registration, which is wild to me. Like, you have the right to not vote as much as you have the right to vote. And they try to register everybody and their grandma and their dog so they can bloat the voter roll so it's easier to sway an election or to steal an election. And it opens up the door for a bunch of fraud and abuse. Mail-in ballots without signature verification and unlimited mail-in ballot voting. This is just opening the door for fraud and abuse. Okay, I don't think anybody could really argue with that. Any opposition to these election changes is framed as an attack on civil rights. So if you are against mail-in voting for unlimited time periods, if you are pro voter ID, if you are pro signature verification, they say that you are a bigot and that you're attacking civil rights. And anyone who dares disagree with you, you're just racist, and they accuse you of racism and bigotry. And they use the VRA as a weapon. They don't use it as a shield. And that's really what the VRA is supposed to be all about. It's supposed to be a shield. And really, it was a shield that was created because the Democrats were engaging in voter suppression. And they still engage in voter suppression. Look at the maps in Illinois. That is a form of voter suppression. You're suppressing the vote of and the voice of rural voters and the representation of rural voters. So this is not about expanding access, voting access anymore. This is about expanding political power. And they use the VRA as a political weapon. So finally, I want to talk about how Democrats have used the Voting Rights Act as a boogeyman narrative to energize their base. They say things like Republicans are trying to take your right to vote away. Okay. They say things like the GOP is hacking your democracy. We must act to save the Voting Rights Act. Okay. They say these slogans, and there's a lot of emotional appeals to that because the Voting Rights Act is very important, was very important in 1965. But these emotional appeals are often divorced from reality, but they're extremely effective in fundraising. So in media manipulation and getting out the vote efforts, like especially in these minority communities where they say, oh, you're Black, they're trying to suppress your vote. That's not true. Actually, the voter suppression that's been going on is actually when it comes to predominantly white rural counties, farming communities who are predominantly white. They're the ones who are, their voice is being suppressed and their vote is being suppressed because of the gerrymandering that's been going on for decades. So they're wrong in that, minority communities have a ton of representation, Democrat representation now, because the gerrymandering that's going on. So the original Voting Rights Act was designed to protect the sacred right to vote for all Americans. Today, the Democrats are weaponizing it as a political tool, using it to stoke fear, to start litigation, and to really secure their own power. And they use it for get out the vote efforts, and they accuse anyone who stands in their way of being against democracy. And this isn't about protecting votes anymore. It's about protecting their grip on power, and they weaponize the VRA. All right, I got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about RFK. I promised you that we would get to this story. He's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr. He dropped a bombshell yesterday about the mRNA vaccines and how they actually prolonged the COVID-19 pandemic. I find it fascinating that most of my friends who got vaxxed and got the jab, they actually contract COVID way more. I don't know why. This is just something that I've only had COVID once, and I don't know if my natural immunity is just superior or what. But any of my friends who got the jab, they just turn out to get COVID way more often. But in a video posted on X, the DHS Secretary Kennedy announced that the science has been reviewed, and it actually shows that the shots that were forced on the public, by the way, if you didn't get it, you would lose your job, that this actually supposedly caused more variants. So I'm going to be chatting a little bit about that. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'll be right back. Hey, you're listening to the Conservative Cat Clips. This is the place where we don't call 911 first. Nope, we pray, we prepare, and yes, we pack heat. Every time there's a tragedy, the media and the Democrats, they start crying, do something, and do something. And what they mean is more laws, more bans, and more restrictions, not on criminals, mind you, but on law-abiding citizens. So let me tell you what evil doesn't care about. They don't care about legislation. The man willing to break the 6th commandment, thou shalt not murder, doesn't blink twice at your AR-15 ban. Okay, he doesn't read your gun-free zone signs. He sees those signs and he says, this is an invitation for me. Gun control doesn't stop evil. It disarms good people. The founding fathers didn't give us the Second Amendment so we could go hunting. They gave us the Second Amendment to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And newsflash, tyrants don't tend to announce themselves. They come wearing smiles and waving around fancy policies. And I also want to talk about self-defense today. Self-defense. The average police response time in big cities like Chicago could be up to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. I know the Chicago PD is really struggling with that. Response times in rural areas, it could get up to even 30 minutes response time. So if somebody kicks down your door, are you going to ask them to wait until the government sends backup to protect you, or are you going to protect your family and take matters into your own hands? So grandma, in Peoria, Illinois, she is just trying to defend her property, but yet she's the one treated like a criminal. She has to go through all kinds of crazy background checks, permits, training. And the thug in Chicago, he gets the gun out of his trunk in an alley, and he didn't think twice about our laws, okay? It's about power. It always has been. Every dictatorship in history has disarmed their citizens first. First, that's Stalin, that's Hitler, that's Mao. They didn't want competition. And once the guns were gone, so were the rights, the freedom, and the people. So a disarmed people is a controlled people. But an armed, faithful, and free people, that is a nightmare for tyrants. And really, it's a blessing to your neighbors if you are armed. The Second Amendment isn't outdated. It's eternal. And just like evil, just like our right, just like the evil has the right to do evil things, and that they will, we have the right to resist evil and to arm ourselves. And the Second Amendment is pretty dang clear, shall not be infringed. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, smash that like button. Be sure to subscribe right now. Head on over to patriotpumpenergy.com. Get your bottle of Patriot Pump. It's right on the shelf in the back here. The bottle, it is some premium pre-workout stuff, folks. It's really good. No artificial colorings. We believe that supplements are an alternative to pharmaceuticals, and this is something that is clean energy. There's a little bit of caffeine in it, but it's not an exorbitant amount that's going to get you addicted. Like a lot of these energy drinks, they put like 200, 300. It's insane, the milligrams that they use. And really, it's designed to get you addicted. So like the sugars and things, like none of that is in there. Be sure to go grab it. Use the promo code Conservative Cat. It's the best promo code out there. Promo code Conservative Cat. Let's talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He announced that the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, BARDA, is reviewing 22 mRNA vaccine development investments, and they began canceling them because, to put it simply, they failed to protect against infections like COVID. So they are canceling 22 mRNA vaccine investments, development investments, because they are not stopping COVID. In fact, they're making it worse. Kennedy announced that the science has been reviewed, and it actually shows that these shots that were forced on us during the pandemic, really, because you'd lose your job, forced on the public by the government to supposedly stop the COVID pandemic, actually helped cause all kinds of variants. So the shots themselves caused the pandemic to go on longer because the virus just kept mutating and causing all of these variants. And really, if we would have just said, hey, use your natural immunity, this virus would probably be eradicated by now. So I find it fascinating that a lot of my friends who got the jab, they wind up with COVID like every year. I've gotten COVID once. That was in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. I think in 2021 maybe. And it sucked. It really sucked. And it was definitely man-made. It was a lab leak. It was not like anything I've ever had before. Shortly after that, I quit smoking. I was a big fan of the cigarettes. I stopped because it freaked me out. COVID really, like, it's not anything to mess around with. You definitely need to protect yourself against COVID. And I was always preaching ivermectin. During the height of the pandemic, after I had contracted it, I used a little bit of ivermectin, and I never got it. Now, obviously, that is kind of like dwindled away. I don't use ivermectin like regularly. If I feel like I had the sniffles, I would use my ivermectin as an antiviral. Hell, I had to try to get a black bag doctor to prescribe it for me. And I had to go to like this sketchy pharmacist because CVS wouldn't fill it, or Walgreens, a lot of these like traditional pharmacies wouldn't fill ivermectin at the time. But anyway, so let's put another tally mark in the conspiracy theorist column, because I was right. I said that the jabs were probably actually a bad thing at the time, because they were not nearly as good as natural immunity, and this was prolonging the pandemic. Let's take a listen to what Secretary Kennedy had to say. Take a listen.
Hi, it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here, your HHS secretary. At HHS, we have a division called the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA. BARDA drives some of our most advanced scientific research. It funds developments of vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, and other tools to fight emerging diseases and national health threats. Over the past few weeks, BARDA reviewed 22 mRNA vaccine development investments and began canceling them. Let me explain why. Most of these shots are for flu or COVID, but as the pandemic showed us, mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. Here's the problem. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective. This dynamic drives a phenomena called antigenic shift, meaning that the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine. Millions of people, maybe even you or someone you know, caught the Omicron variant despite being vaccinated. That's because a single mutation can make mRNA vaccines ineffective. The same risk applies to flu. After reviewing the science and consulting top experts at NIH and FDA, HHS has determined that mRNA technology poses more risks than benefits for these respiratory viruses. That's why, after extensive review, BARDA has begun the process of terminating these 22 contracts totaling just under $500 million. To replace the troubled mRNA programs, we're prioritizing the development of safer, broader vaccine strategies, like whole virus vaccines and novel platforms that don't collapse when viruses mutate. Let me be absolutely clear. HHS supports safe, effective vaccines for every American who wants them. That's why we're moving beyond the limitations of mRNA for respiratory viruses and investing in better solutions. Thank you.
I absolutely love our HHS secretary. So he says this, quote, "We reviewed the science, listened to the experts, and acted. BARDA is terminating these 22 mRNA vaccine development investments because the data shows that the vaccines fail to protect effectively against upper respiratory infections like COVID and the flu. We're shifting funding towards safer, broader vaccine platforms that remain effective even as the viruses mutate." So it's a scam. Okay, they continue to create a new COVID vaccine, every year, and they come out with their new COVID vaccine every year to try to address the variant. But the virus is smart and it just keeps mutating, and they're not really even effective. So the more and more they dump money into this thing and they change the shot, it's not going to be effective, and it's just going to waste money. And he said there that they are canceling these 22 contracts, and they totaled $500 million, which is insane. He further explained that the mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen, one mutation, and the vaccine becomes ineffective. Okay, so it only targets, so this jab that they're creating and the jab that they keep creating, they aren't targeting it for all the various mutations. They're only making like a vaccine for a small part of the proteins. And once the virus mutates, it's totally ineffective. So in layman's terms, he said that means the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations. So it's actually much worse. So the vaccine is creating these mutations, and like it's getting smarter. So the jab makes the virus smarter. So it encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics. And the virus is constantly mutating to escape these protective effects of the vaccine. The same risk applies to the flu, which is why I never get flu shots, because the flu shot kind of works the same way. And honestly, the flu shot just makes me sick. I've gotten the flu shot like once. And after that, I was like, yeah, never again. And I got the flu when I got the flu shot, and I didn't catch the flu when I didn't take the flu shot, right? So, yeah, I mean, just talk to your friends, talk to people in real life. And most of the people I talk to, people who actually get the flu shot, wind up with the flu. People who actually get the COVID shot wind up with COVID. It's because the virus like mutates and like gets stronger and smarter, and you're more susceptible to it, and it prolongs these pandemics and it makes you sicker. So therefore, he said, we are reviewing the science and consulting top experts at the NIH and the FDA. HHS has determined that the mRNA technology poses more risk than benefits for these respiratory viruses. He said BARDA has begun the process of terminating these contracts. Like I said, it's all a money-making thing, totaling $500 million. He shared that the next step will be to replace these troubled mRNA contracts, sharing that they have prioritized the development of a safer, broader vaccine strategy. So the Secretary of Health closed out the video by explaining that the HHS supports safe, effective vaccines for every American who wants them. And they are moving past these mRNA vaccines to something that works better. Okay, so I don't know what that'll look like, because I'm not like a scientist. I have no idea like how they're going to create this broader vaccine that is actually effective. All I know is that, hey, when I talk to people who are vaxxed and got the COVID jab, they actually wind up sick. People who have natural immunity or didn't get the jab, myself included, got sick maybe once and never got COVID ever again, because natural immunity is superior, as always. Shortly after President Donald Trump took office, the White House actually updated their website on covid.gov, and it clearly states in big, bold letters that the pandemic was caused by a labs leak. If you've ever contracted the virus, COVID, you know that this was man-made and that this was not naturally occurring. It's very odd. I lost my sense of taste and smell for like a year. And this just tells me that it's not a normal, like this is not a normal virus. There's something seriously wrong with this virus. So the message on the page, when Trump took office, the White House page, the true origins of COVID, they pointed out that not only the origin of the virus was a lab leak and it came from Wuhan, but they also pointed to the misinformation as its origins was pushed on us. So like Fauci and all of these experts, they claimed that it was naturally occurring, or that like bats, right? So here's what the website says. The proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory. This was the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push a preferred narrative that COVID originated naturally. Another one in the column for these conspiracy theorists, I want to, put a tally. Conspiracy theorist 1, everybody else 0. Okay, because like at this point, like we are leading 120-0 because the conspiracy theorists were all right. We turned out to be correct. So I want to get to a couple of more stories today. I told you about Attorney General Texas Attorney General, say that, Ken Paxton. My brain goes way too fast for my mouth sometimes. He is preparing to vacate the seats of these Democrat state lawmakers that fled to stop the redistricting vote. The left-wing legislators boarded private planes and flew off to Illinois, flew off to New York, and they did that to deny a quorum. And the Texas Republicans need that in order to pass the congressional map. Arrest warrants have been issued and ordered by Governor Greg Abbott. Provision within the state's constitution allows them to kind of combat this type of gamesmanship. So there are those arrest warrants out. But according to Paxton, the next step here is to vacate their spots. So these Democrats, if they don't return by Friday, they not only are possibly facing arrest if they have arrest warrants out for them, but their seats are now going to be vacant, which means they will have to, Greg Abbott, I think, is going to be in charge of those appointments. Democrats have abandoned their offices by fleeing Texas. This is what Ken Paxton said. A failure to respond to the call of the House constitutes as a dereliction of duty as elected officials. This is what Paxton said. He said, starting Friday, any rogue lawmakers refusing to return to the House will be held accountable for vacating their office. The people of Texas elected lawmakers, not jet-setting runaways looking for headlines. If you don't show up to work, you get fired. So the rulings issued by the Supreme Court of Texas do not allow the minority faction of the legislature to improperly interfere with the legislative majority prerogative to conduct business. So this is really important, that this is all legal stuff. This is all in the state constitution, and they all have the power to do this. It's actually crafted in there because you can't just say F you to the democratic process. Okay, so it's in there as a protection for the people. By removing themselves from the state for the explicit purpose of interfering with the proceedings of the Texas legislature, Democrats are refusing to perform their duties in a manner that amounts to the abandonment of office. Okay, so if the runaway members of the legislative minority do not return to the House and resume their performance of their duties by the deadline, Attorney General Paxton will seek judicial relief, confirming that their office is vacant. Whoa. I think that they're being kind of lax with this, and I'll get to that here in just a second. I want to see them really crack down on these Texas Democrats. But the legal case surrounds part of the Texas Constitution that allows for a seat to be declared abandoned if the legislator fails to fulfill their duties for too long. Now, how that would apply here is still kind of an open question. It's kind of a question mark because surely that this is going to be tied up in courts, lawsuits, and things like that. And Does it reach the definition in the state constitution of abandonment? We'll have to see. Now, to me, if you openly express that you have the intent of not fulfilling your duties, and you do that for a long period of time, like we're going on a week here, to me, that's abandonment. And I don't see why it wouldn't be considered abandonment in the court of law. According to Paxton, they will have to bring, the attorney general will have to bring lawsuits in each district. So against each, so it can't even be a class action type lawsuit. So every single member is going to have their own separate lawsuit, which sounds really annoying. So this process is not going to be quick. Still, I think it's the path that should be taken. I think it should be taken now. I think that they should be considered vacant now and not give them the grace of Friday. Abbott, in the meantime, should call for special sessions every 30 days to ensure that these Democrats remain exiled with no ability to return without facing arrest. So Greg Abbott, continue to call these special sessions every 30 days to ensure that the Democrats remain exiled. And I think that Greg has to play the game here. And he should continue to call these special sessions, and they will continue to, of course, being Democrats that they are, not go to their job and perform their job. And I think that he should continue these special sessions, and if they don't return, arrest them. And they should be arrested right now, to be clear. So I don't know how long they are willing to live in hotel rooms in Chicago or rack up these fines every day, because it's like $500 a day that they're not doing their jobs. I don't know how long they're willing to do that, but Greg Abbott should kind of play chicken with them and continue to call special sessions and see how long they remain in Chicago and in these hotel rooms and how long they are willing to rack up these fines. So at this point, I don't want them to have the option of coming back. So Ken Paxton is being very gracious here, where he gives them the option to return voluntarily by Friday. Republicans did this all in 2021, by the way, because this isn't the first time the Texas Democrats have fled. They fled to Washington, D.C. after this integrity vote. The voter integrity vote was going to happen. So they shouldn't back off the threats of arrest. They should force them to come back. They should say extradite them. Greg Abbott should be using his power of extradition and get them, arrest them. And then when they come back, they should come back to vacant seats. Okay, in my opinion, they shouldn't have deadlines. I think this is just feeding into the political gamesmanship that they're playing. No lessons were learned, obviously, from 2021 when they did this. So they're abusing the system again. And this time around, the moment they hit the ground in Chicago, they should have been put in handcuffs, okay? They should be put in handcuffs. They should be drugged down to the Texas Capitol. I don't care about the optics. I don't care about grace and partisan or bipartisanship. I don't care about any of that. That all went out the window a long time ago. I think it went out the window in 2021 when they pulled this stunt. So I also think that there should be some sort of ballot initiative where you could do away with quorum. The Democrats, when they have the majority, they don't really follow the quorum rule anyway. We've seen that play out in the state legislature here in the state of Illinois. They like to waive rules and things like that. So there could be a ballot initiative that does away with the quorum requirement altogether. I mean, would I vote for that? I don't know. I mean, it would depend, because when you're in the minority, it sucks. Okay. Being in the minority here in the state of Illinois, I like quorum, but I mean, the Democrats don't even really care about quorum all that much anyway, the majority party. So, I mean, they only follow, Republicans are the only ones who follow the rules when it comes to quorum rules. Okay. So gerrymandering exists for a reason, and we can't have a system where Democrat-led states like Illinois California, Maryland, and others, they get to push things to the max, while Texas doesn't. Okay. They're gerrymandering these leftist states. Texas should be allowed to gerrymander if they're allowed to gerrymander, right? These states. I think that we could do away with all of it if you just if you have good leaders, biblical leaders in office, you could come up with a way of drawing these maps and take the human element out of it altogether. We're living in 2025. We have the technology to do that. So you don't really need humans to draw these maps anymore. I don't know why we just don't do that in all of these states, but Texas needs to start playing ball here. I think that they're being Greg and Paxton, I think that they're being very weak. They need to be harder on this. They need to actually cuff these people and drag them back to the state capitol. And then they need to vacate their seats now, because I think that them being gone for this period of time constitutes as abandonment. I think that they've already met the definition. In 2021, when they pulled this stunt, like, they've already proved that they haven't learned their lesson. We shouldn't keep giving them deadlines. This Friday deadline is kind of bunk. I think that they should just vacate their seats right now. So the way you stop congressional gerrymandering is by winning state elections. Texas Democrats should try that sometime. Okay. If the Republicans want to, in Illinois, if they want to stop the gerrymandering, they've got to start winning. Okay. That is our only option right now, because there is never going to be a conversation about maps being drawn fairly, because all of these people want to stay in their jobs. And anytime you talk about fair maps, that opens up the door for them to all lose their jobs. So they're never going to talk about crafting fair maps or taking the human element out of it altogether, because these people are all career politicians. So the gerrymandering conversation, the legislation will never be passed, because that's just the nature of these people. We need really biblical leaders in there, Christians who are truly looking at government as a form of public service and only want to be there for a couple of years. Term limits might actually help this gerrymandering, but right now, the only way to combat gerrymandering, I would say, would be to win state elections. And the Democrats have they've rigged the game so much to where they'll never lose a state election really again. So I don't know. It's a tough conversation. Republicans need to start winning in Illinois if they want to stop the gerrymandering. And Texas Democrats, you guys should start winning in Texas if you want to stop the gerrymandering. Okay, so I do have to talk about one more story, and then I'm going to skedoodle. But President Donald Trump, he kind of became irate. And I haven't seen President Donald Trump like this in a long time. And I kind of like when he does this, because when he does this, even the left will look at this and they'll be like, oh, he's serious. And then they there's certain leaders out there, when they're serious, and you don't want to mess with them when they're serious. So it's the tonality here, the way Donald Trump addressed this, that I absolutely applaud. And I think even the Democrats will not fight Donald on this, because, I mean, one, it's just indefensible what's going on in D.C. As far as violent crime goes, and these soft sentences that are being handed to offenders. So now what President Donald Trump is doing is he's threatening to federalize the Democrat-run city if nothing is done to address the problems of violent crime and soft sentences. Okay, these soft on crime policies, the soft sentences. If nothing is done to address those problems, he's going to federalize. And I think that, like, Democrats don't even want to, like, touch Donald Trump on this issue, because I haven't even really seen mainstream media go after him. Like, he's a tyrant and he's calling for the federalization and of the city and blah, blah, blah. This comes after a Doge staffer was severely beaten when he went to the aid of a woman who was being attacked by a mob of teen boys. Trump took to Truth Social here, and he put the Democrat mayor, Muriel Bowser, so she's the Washington, D.C. mayor, and the city council on notice. And he said that something needs to be done immediately. So I'll share his Truth Social with you guys. Here we go. Crime in Washington, D.C. is totally out of control. Local youths and gang members, some only 14, 15, 16 years old, are randomly attacking, mugging, maiming, and shooting innocent citizens. At the same time, knowing that they will be immediately released. They're not afraid of law enforcement because there's nothing ever happens to them, but it's going to happen now. The law in DC must be changed to prosecute these minors as adults and lock them up for a long time, starting at the age of 14. The most recent victim was beaten mercilessly by local thugs. Washington, D.C. must be safe, clean, and beautiful for all Americans, and most importantly, for the world to see. If D.C. doesn't get their act together, and quickly, we will have no choice but to take federal control of the city and run the city how it should be run and put criminals on notice. And they're not going to get away with it anymore. Perhaps it should be, or perhaps it should have been done a long time ago. Then this incredible young man and so many others would not have to go through the horrors of violent crime. If this continues, I'm going to exert my powers and federalize the city, make America great again. That is what Donald Trump said on Truth Social. So during a press conference, and I'm going to share with you his kind of demeanor and like the tonality here in this clip. This was an impromptu kind of press conference, and he was signing an executive order related to the 2028 Olympics, where the president's going to be in charge of all of that, not Gavin Newsom. The Los Angeles Olympics, it's the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, so he's going to be in charge of all of it, not Gavin Newsom. Haha, take that. Now, in this press conference, he didn't mince words. He told the city leaders, straighten up your act. I find it fascinating because the Democrats aren't really touching this right now. Like, mainstream media is not calling him a fascist or Hitler or anything, which I was expecting when you say things like federalize the city. But they haven't done that. And I think it's because the way he's approached this, and people know that violent crime is getting out of control. And the mainstream doesn't want to touch this because they know it's a problem and they know he's right.
By the way, I have to say that somebody from Doge was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C. And either they're going to straighten their act out in terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run. By the way, I have to say.
There you have it. So that's Donald. Very somber, very direct. And this is fascinating. The White House Rapid Response Team posted a photo of the Doge employee following the beating. It was pretty brutal. I won't share it here, but I will share Elon Musk's tweet. He is the former head of Doge, and he weighed in on the beating of the staffer, and he advocated for the federalization of the nation's capital. So we know Elon Musk is not like super friendly with President Donald Trump, but even he is calling for the federalization of the city. So he said a few days ago, a gang of about a dozen men tried to assault a woman in her car. Doge team member saw what was happening and he ran to her defense. He was severely beaten to the point of a concussion, but he saved her. It's time to federalize DC. That is what Elon Musk had thrown out there on X. So this isn't the only guy, though. Like, I want to be pretty clear. Like, the Doge employee, he's not the only one who's been beaten. There was an intern for Republican Representative Ron Estes, I think is his name, and he's of Kansas. There's a Kansas congressman. He had an intern, and he was gunned down when he stepped out to go pick up some dinner. Okay, and then there was a bystander during that shooting. His name was Eric Tarpinian. I'm totally messing up, but he was an innocent bystander, and the Metropolitan Police Department has yet to identify the murderer. Okay, in this shooting where there was an intern gunned down, and then there was an innocent bystander that was gunned down who was only the age of 21. Okay, and they still don't have the suspect for that murder. So A month before that, a month before June, in May, the park in the Navy Yard, home to the Navy's Sea System Command, was besieged by a mob of teenagers who proceeded to fight and cause chaos for the local residents there. So something needs to be done. Good for President Donald Trump. He came out and he said, I'm going to federalize the city. Like, he gets a firsthand look, I guess, at some of this stuff, being that he's like living there and he gets like front row seat. So good for President Donald Trump. Yes, I'm calling for the federalization of that city. It needs to be done. All right, you guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Love you so much. To answer some of your questions, yes, Lisa, you can use Patriot Pump every single day if you don't work out. The beauty about this pre-workout, it's not like your other pre-workouts. PatriotPumpEnergy.com. Use promo code ConservativeCat. The beauty about it is that you can use it almost as like a cup of coffee or an alternative to coffee. I like the taste of coffee, so I still drink some of my coffee, and then I drink the Patriot Pump some days of the week. But yes, you can use Patriot Pump even if you don't work out, because there's not exorbitant amounts of caffeine to try to get you hooked like some of these energy drinks do. This is just equivalent to like maybe a couple of cups of coffee. So you're going to be just fine. Now, some pre-workouts that they make out there, they put crazy amounts of caffeine in there, and you have to work out. Otherwise, you're going to like get the shakes and it won't be good. This is not like that. So I heard of a pharmacy called an all-family pharmacy where you can get prescriptions filled. Yeah, mine was like a hole in the wall, like in I think it was in Joliet. I haven't gotten, obviously, ivermectin in a couple of years, so I forget the name of the pharmacy, but it was definitely a family-run pharmacy. It was not like your big names, and I couldn't get my ivermectin filled anywhere. I couldn't get a doctor to fill it, so I found like a conservative doctor, black bag type doctor who would fill it for myself and for my dad, who came down with COVID and had a serious case of COVID. Now, he was in vax, but he hasn't gotten COVID since. Now, he had comorbidities, right? And COVID is very serious stuff. So that's why we really need a serious vaccine. The mRNA vaccine, like RFK Jr. was saying, is that it's not serious. And it will actually cause more problems, and it's actually more of a risk than a benefit, because the virus keeps mutating with these jabs, and it's getting more violent, the virus, and it's getting smarter with the jabs that they're currently making. And he said we need a broader, more safe and effective vaccine. So good for RFK Jr. He's canceling a lot of these contracts, and he said he's done. He's done with the jab. Americans deserve effective treatment, and we're prolonging really the COVID pandemic with these jabs. And that's what RFK Jr., the HHS secretary, or the HHS secretary, had said. All right, you guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Love you so much. Be sure to subscribe and head on over to Patriot Pump Energy and buy your pre-workout today. Use promo code ConservativeCat. Bye-bye.